How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another Peacemaker recap, review, and breakdown. This is for episode 6, and we're somewhat nearing the end of the first season now. We can't forget that there is only 8 episodes, and I feel like with the end of this episode and where things are going, the somewhat manhunt for Peacemaker now, I can kind of see how this might end in some way, shape, or form. Not entirely, but considering the team have got a bit more of a target on that cow, you could say, of the butterflies, it looks like everything is somewhat nearing a bit of a close, all while it will be really chaotic at the same time with the whole police department basically being taken over by butterflies. Yes. I know, yes. But this episode started off right where we left off last week, and that is with Leota running away from Clemson, and it kind of went down how I thought, just in terms of how he wasn't going to hurt her, but I did have some subverted expectations here, and how I didn't know that Harcourt already knew, let alone John, so half the team was already in on it, and this is where we got a little bit of answers, because it was the show's way of somewhat telling a new character, which through proxy was us, learning about, you know, what is the real big plan with the butterflies. And Clemson did explain that his people came to Earth because the planet was dying. And the butterfly that was in the Senator Goff, the one that they basically killed and Peacemaker and Vigilante took away in that little jar, he, or she, should I say, is the queen. The actual queen of the butterflies, and we all kind of know where that ended up in this episode with that detective, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I think the name that Leota found out was Ixtac Ik. But as usual, in this moment, they were balancing somewhat the severity of the situation with also how this butterfly within Clemson feels really somewhat guilty at the same time, all while popping out jokes, you know, about butterflies and you know, certain body parts and all that kind of stuff. It's a very charming, and as I kind of big up every single week, feature to that of the Peacemaker show, the comedy balanced with, you know, the somewhat severity of the situation at times as well. And we get more and more into that this episode with, you know, I guess a bit more empathy for Peacemaker, because yet again, as we go throughout, it's very obvious to him that the team is keeping something from him, and he just feels excluded. Such a team-building episode last week with the really feels good, somewhat, you know, van ride at the end of the episode with Harcourt smiling, the group chat with the picture taken. It kind of went the opposite end towards the end of this episode with Peacemaker. I mean, in a way. So the theories that we've been going off here on the channel, and that you guys have been contributing down in the comments, which, you know, I do read every single one, so leave your theories as usual for this week's episode, was that maybe there was a little bit of a civil war going on here, and yes, but no, but yes, in a kind of way. We were somewhat right about it. Now, Clemson was indeed against his own race, essentially taking over the human race, because that is the explanation we got when he said that they liked it here, they were going to live out their lives since their planet was dying. But then Goff and the others started planning about how to dominate the world, and that's when they started leeching, getting people or taking over hosts of, you know, just basically humans in high positions of power, and they thought that Clemson was overly sensitive. And to be fair, it's a good thing that he's a sensitive butterfly, and that goes back to briefly what I was teasing earlier with Leota saying, but you still took over someone, you still basically killed someone, Clemson, and this all came down to in how he dreads waking up every day to his memories. So it's nice to see that the butterflies, at least some of them, I'm sure there's more of them out there like Clemson, do have feelings and do not necessarily want to take over the planet. I wonder if we're going to meet more of them. But this is where we learn that Waller doesn't even know. I actually assumed up until when we learned that Waller may have well been aware that Clemson was a butterfly, but maybe one to be trusted because, you know, knowing Waller, she would probably, yeah, work with one of them if one of them was on the inside and trying to help the humans stop this alien invasion, but she doesn't even know. So Leota feels a little bit uncomfortable about this because the secret is still in the can that nobody knows that she is Waller's daughter. That is something I genuinely can't wait for the team to find out about, and I don't know if it's going to happen in the finale or next week's episode. I think it could be next week's episode because we can't forget, next week's episode is the penultimate episode. Now, in between things, we have Peacemaker doing a favor for, was that the janitor from the first episode? I think it was, in the hospital scene. But either way, he's answering questions, like a show and tell in school, because he's a superhero, I guess, and they were basically all kind of ripping into him a little bit. There were some genuine questions there. I like the Kite Man reference once again, picking up from the end of last episode when we saw the newspaper clipping, but here he says that he defeated Kite Man with 2 fists, a Desert Eagle, and 2 rocket launchers. punches. Again, I would love to see that fight because, as I mentioned last week, I could imagine him is similar to that on top of the gorilla last week, just punching the head, but instead it would be on Kite Man in the sky. In between all the jokes I appreciated from the kids saying, do you have a coterie of supervillains? That just instantly triggered him and probably made him think back to the neighbor who kept asking the same thing. To all the other cool little references about, you know, ooh, have you seen The Flash or, you know, Wonder Woman and stuff. This is where he got asked about, do you have an origin story? And the words origin story for Peacemaker kind of only means one thing. And I did think that we were going to revisit those flashbacks, and I wonder if we're still yet to get a longer and bigger one, but this might be the extent of it because it's very obvious that a little fist fight between Peacemaker and his brother led to an unfortunate accident. It's not like, you know, when you're kids, if you get in a fight, you intend to kill someone, but unfortunately, Chris's brother, Peacemaker's brother, died. He like fitted, and ever since that moment it really drove home even more to Peacemaker's father how much he resents his own son, especially considering where we're getting at in this episode, and not to mention every episode before this he basically doesn't give a crap about his son and he'd rather him be dead and have his other son back, which is, you know, so getting into that little flashback where Peacemaker in front of a classroom full of kids, you know, just kind of zoned out. It is, again, that kind of balance of comedy in this show to really heart-sinking moments where you just feel like, damn. If you guys remember as well from last week's episode, that detective went to see her uncle who happened to be a judge, and he more or less signed off on all the evidence that led to basically Peacemaker's father getting out of jail. And of course, they're still one-upping each other on the racist jokes, but this only meant one thing, and that he was going to go after his son, which he does say he's going to do when he gets in the car at the end. We also have Locke absolutely infuriated about this because we can't forget his one job on behalf of Clemson, on behalf of Waller, on behalf of this whole mission to save this planet and stop the alien invasion is to stop anyone or anything else interfering with this team's operation. And obviously, the White Dragon going after his son would definitely screw a few things up there, which it does seem is going to happen at the same time as a manhunt at the end of this episode. So this is what I mean. There's quite a few, you know, cogs turning in the entire, like, little machine that is the Peacemaker show. But we also can't forget that, I mean, I guess, if I'm being honest here, Peacemaker's father probably just wants to kill him anyway, but he is technically the straw that broke the camel's back for him is Vigilante going into prison to kill Peacemaker's father, and he thought that his son sent Vigilante after him, well, to kill him in prison. So I do wonder if, you know, if he learned the truth that Peacemaker didn't send Vigilante in there, would he change his mind? But I don't think so. It seems that he's wanted him dead ever since his brother died, but there was just one slight shred of humanity in him that just stopped him from doing that, but for the rest of his life, treating him like crap. But either way, it's going to be interesting to see that fight play out probably next episode, or maybe it will carry on into the finale. Around about this point in the episode, there's several scenes kind of being darted in between each other. We have Peacemaker at home feeding Goff, as well as Eagly. We have Adrian knock at the door. We have Harcourt and Leota kind of Leota especially kind of feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that there technically is an alien in the other room. Again, a big takeaway from this show for fans is Adrian Chase. I think he is absolutely hilarious. I mean, obviously John Cena's Peacemaker as well, but this next scene, he's just so stupid. I mean, I know he's a sociopathic psychopath, Adrian Chase, but some of his questions are just so... He's deliberately made out to be a bit of an idiot, so to speak. Like later on, it's like, which one's Eagly? You know, and which one's me? And he's just standing there, you know, just little moments like that. But here, when he's asking Goff's favorite color, and Peacemaker getting really frustrated that, you know, it's yes or no questions, and then not to mention we have the queen of the butterflies just tapping on the glass. What more can I say than this scene was just absolutely hilarious and just probably one of my favorites out of all of the episodes so far. I think my favorite question from Vigilante though was asking about, are you here to put babies in us? And he was actually disappointed by the result, or the answer shall I say, in it being no, because how else is he going to experience motherhood? Yeah. But this is when the cops are arriving. They've all geared up to take Peacemaker out, so they go to his address. We have Clemson trying to ring, but it doesn't work out on Peacemaker's phone, so he rings Vigilante. Of course, when he gets rung, he's just like, I don't know who Vigilante is. You know, of course, that's his whole shtick there. But they do get the warning, and the cops are right outside, and it's a very tight situation. They let Eagly out through the roof. They follow, but that's when Vigilante falls off the tree, and as a result, Goff's little glass jar breaks, and she more or less goes right after the detective. I think her name's Sophie. I keep calling her the detective, but I guess that's the last of the detective from now on, since she has now been taken over by the Queen, or Goth. But the whole time they were there, by the way, and I forgot to mention this, obviously they didn't find them inside, so she said, like, ransack the place, so they were searching. I was just thinking, like, they're gonna find the diary. This was very obvious that this was gonna happen. We were talking about it last week, and maybe even the week before, and I think a lot of us have wanted to know what Waller's agenda really is, because we'll talk about this a little bit more towards the end, but obviously the message that the Butterflies gave out through the news conference, if you will, about Peacemaker's diary isn't the narrative that Waller was going to go with planting that in the first place through implementing her daughter in that plan. Like, that diary was meant to kind of talk about something else, and we do know that the cop did say to Locke when he handed it to him that there's some crazy shit in there, but we will get into that a little bit later with that ending. But yeah, as they're running and getting pursued through the woods, Vigilante does end up throwing his blade at a cop, even though Peacemaker stopped him from killing the detective a little bit earlier. Eagly was going ham, like, Jesus. Like, I thought it was cool with him providing air support, but as Adrian Chase said, like, he really is hardcore. He was like picking and clawing at all of their faces. It was getting a bit messed up. This is when a couple of cops get the drop on Peacemaker, and like, you know, they're almost about to shoot, but that's when Locke arrives and kills them. And here we're getting a little bit more into like the humanity of Peacemaker, despite him being this developed weapon from his father who is meant to achieve peace at any and all costs, no matter how many women or children he needs to kill. He's evidently somewhat had a little bit of an outlook, and he's never really, and as I've always said, he believes he's always been doing the right thing, but now and recently after the Suicide Squad, he's starting to question the ways that he was achieving that, beforehand at least, and he doesn't really just want to kill anymore. I mean, doesn't mind killing aliens, but if he does have to kill, he at least probably wants to do a bit more due diligence these days, rather than just straight up doing, for example, what Adrian Chase mentioned in the car that they used to do. Because he says, you know, what's going on with you? We used to go out and kill bad guys, boom, boom, no problem. We accidentally killed the wrong person. Oh, shoot, bummer. Oh, yeah, of course, Adrian. But he was also saying, then we move on. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a new age belief that all life is sacred. So I wouldn't say he technically believes that, like, to that level, but clearly he's starting to realize that even though he believed he was doing the right thing and he wanted to be a hero, that's why he, you know, so innocently frames the Kite Man arrest that he did. Like, new hero Peacemaker apprehends Kite Man or whatever, or ends his reign of terror. He just wants to give a little bit more thought to it now, and I think after all the somewhat blunt killing that he's done, it is creeping up on him a little bit. Again, though, I loved all of this interaction between Peacemaker and Vigilante, whether that's the phone password being his birthday, or even before that when he chucks out his phone and it was a secure phone. God damn it, Adrian. But since the detective is now the queen of the butterflies, she is now straight to wanting to rally her little butterfly trooplings to continue the plan. So even though she was, you know, drawing the peace sign, and that's how they started talking to her earlier on in the episode, she really still isn't about peace. She wants to, yeah, world domination style, invasion style, go back to the basics of what they were doing earlier. So she's straight back to the station, starts using some butterfly tech or whatever to appear, some butterfly weird-ass symbols. I think that was to put a message out to summon all the little butterfly ships that we see a little bit later on. Around about this time, we have Vigilante and Peacemaker return, and we also have Clemson asking about the diary, but he's not too worried about it because Locke, you know, his inside guys got it, but, you know, it's still, I guess, later on comes out. But even though I don't think the actual contents of the diary comes out, as I mentioned earlier, that's just the butterflies wanting to use their own narrative to get Peacemaker and Adrian and their whole team off their arse so they can just continue their plan of world domination without them interrupting it or maybe even stopping it. It also gets out that Peacemaker did indeed keep the Queen Butterfly Goth, and I can't really blame him because in this moment it was somewhat showing what I was talking about earlier. It's like they never tell him anything, he didn't trust them, he wanted answers. He also mentions that Locke killed 3 people and one of them was unconscious, and that obviously quite bothers Peacemaker because I remember when he was running back, he was looking behind him and he just doesn't like the barbaric, ruthless killing. And I think he's starting to register that maybe there's been a few times where maybe he's even been like that, despite believing he was doing the right thing. When you see it a little bit secondhand like that, it puts some things into perspective. And even Clemson in this moment seems shook by that the man he hired did this to good people, like cops. 3 people died. I mean, I think even more technically. And even though he's a butterfly, you could see that he was shook because at the end of the day, he hired Locke to help secure this operation. In this moment, John reckons that he's found out the source of the gloopy gloop stuff that the butterflies eat, and as we know that if they can stop that, that maybe all the butterflies will die out. They track back those delivery trucks of the goop to the bottling company, all the way back to the ranch, which, as we know, butterflies burrow, so there's probably a big-ass operation underground that we're going to see in the next couple of episodes of the team infiltrate. So I'm really looking forward to see some more environment and how big this gloopy gloop manufacturing place that the butterflies have cooked up underground is going to be. This is when Leota says, you know, we have reason to believe that they have a cow, something they somewhat milk, an animal they milk for the gloopy gloop. I keep calling it gloopy gloop stuff, but basically that's what it is. And if they actually kill that thing, then maybe that will be it for once and for all. But again, Peacemaker in this moment is like, well, what do you mean? When were you going to give me that info? Am I the asshole here for actually believing we were a team? And everyone is just remaining really, really quiet. And I feel kind of bad because maybe, to be fair, they do have some deserved apprehension because we do know how quick to kill. Like last episode when Leota asked Peacemaker to go in there chill and he instantly went so maybe they're worried that he might do the same thing to Clemson. But I like to give him a little bit more credit. I think he would just want answers instead of straight up. But I don't know. There have been times before in recent episodes where he just gets the gun out straight away, you know, and they're like, no, don't do that. So it's a bit nuanced there. I do feel bad for him because it's what I spoke about earlier with the team dynamic last episode going to a little bit of now excluding of Vigilante. Well, you know, I guess there's Adrian. Okay, we can exclude him a little bit. But Peacemaker, you know, I feel bad for him. But as Clemson said, we leave at the break of dawn to go to the ranch, so that's going to probably be next episode. And you know, that's all on top of all of this other stuff that happens in the next few minutes of this episode, because it gets into a little bit of a cool montage with several things going on. So, for example, we have Goth, the queen, summon all her butterflies, or at least a bunch of them nearby in their cute little spaceships. And then we visit White Dragon after a bit of, you know, but he goes into his White Dragon cave, and this is where they basically begin to put him in his White Dragon suit. And as I mentioned earlier, that suit is too highly produced to not be used. So this is what I mean. For the last couple of episodes, there's so much stuff cooking on different burners, with the team now finally having a location to go to maybe stop them for once and for all. But we also have, obviously, White Dragon maybe putting a bit of a spanner in the works there. But then, in the montage, we have Goth go to the freaking police department and take over everyone very barbarically. But not only every single cop, but every single prisoner. She now has a little army there, at least within her immediate vicinity, and this is all technically to get them off their ass. Like, if you think about it, this little Black Ops team with Harcourt, Clemson, etc., Peacemaker has been a thorn in their side, so all of this is about stopping them because they've been quite good at beginning to thwart their alien invasion, you could say. But that moment, the callback to the smile earlier on in the precinct, where they're all just smiling really creepily down the hallway. It's just like, what is going on? All I can say is that I'm really looking forward to what this show is gearing up for the explosive looking last couple of episodes. I was going to say finale, but I reckon the penultimate episode is going to go ham as well. But in between scenes, as we gear up towards the end of this episode, Peacemaker obviously returns back to the HQ because he can't return back home. We have Harcourt there, who's put a little dove sign of peace on this P90. And even though he kind of gave a backhanded compliment there, he kind of opens up that he only said that a few episodes ago about the Dove of Peace and how he can only kill when that's on there because he doesn't really want to kill people anymore. Again, this just is, you know, larger talk for what we've talked about with his character and the somewhat realizations he's beginning to happen, because this episode was, you know, a large message of it, especially for the Peacemaker main character, is introspection. And, you know, that's obviously looking in on yourself and what you're really about and what you're thinking. And that is when, you know, after the nice little exchange between Harcourt and Peacemaker with him learning her name is Amelia, and she says, "Good night, Chris, you know, you're really not that bad." I thought, oh my god, is this going to go anywhere? Is he actually going to get the girl, despite all the memes and jokes throughout the whole season? I still don't know if they're going to go there. I don't know. What do you think? Do you really think they're going to have that connection, if you know what I mean? But speaking of the introspection, that's when we get Peacemaker obviously playing the piano, and he went ham. And I think John Cena did learn that, you know, because he was obviously shown actually playing the piano. This was a really moving scene because obviously it was one long filmed scene and they didn't have to do that. And I thought maybe it's just going to be a few piano notes at the beginning, maybe even going on for 20 seconds, but no, they kept going, and through such subtle cinematography or just the camera work going along these different shots and going on Peacemaker's face, these are the moments I appreciate most because it really, it says so much without saying anything at all, like no dialogue, but accompanied by the music, the feelings the character's getting into. Scenes like this don't need any explanation. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I really liked about this kind of lead up to the very, very ending of this episode. But this is when Vigilante arrives and he's like, well, I thought you said you didn't keep a diary. And he's like, well, I don't. Like, what are you on about? And they go upstairs. They see on the TV that the whole taken over precinct have made Peacemaker to look like an absolute crazy mass murdering, massacring douchebag who's killed not only Annie, like the butterfly from the first episode, but the senator and his family and 33 victims at the bottling company. But we all know that they were aliens who were trying to take over the planet. So there's all that context missing. But now every police station in the country or whatever has one mandate, and that is to find and stop the Peacemaker. So as I said earlier, this is all going to be like one big clusterfuck of a mess in the last 2 episodes, and I cannot wait for it. Again, one of the questions I want to leave off to you, the audience, for this episode and this video, I suppose, is revisiting what we said earlier. What do you think? Because obviously the butterflies are manipulating what the diary even was for their own agenda. They just want to stop Peacemaker. That's not really what was in the diary. But what was Waller's original plan with the diary? I mean, Waller isn't exactly a massively kind-spirited person, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow it does come back to the point of everything in there will make Peacemaker's father look bad, and thus he will go to jail for everything that is learned in there. Maybe. And that might exonerate potentially Peacemaker. But why would Waller do that? You know, it doesn't really make much sense. I don't know. I mean, after all, she got her own daughter to plant it in Peacemaker's house. So it's got to be something quite crucial and something larger to Waller's plan. And as I've mentioned a few episodes back, I know Waller does sometimes like to bring out the potential in the people who she puts on her team. So maybe, you know, it is along the lines of what I'm thinking, and it could forge Peacemaker into something she knew he could get to, but he had to be unshackled from his father. And maybe the diary is the key to that. And despite Leota feeling bad about planting something that she didn't really know what the contents in there was, she might not have to feel bad at all if it does actually turn out to be something that could, surprise, surprise, help Peacemaker out in the end. But it does sound uncharacteristic of Waller to do that, but again, it still might be a part of a long, long plan she has. Again, I could be way off base here. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and your theories with everything we've discussed. Let me know what you thought of this episode in general. Leave a like on this video, especially if you got this far. I would really, really appreciate that. It helps out the channel such a bunch, honestly, more than I think what people realize. Subscribe for more videos like this, of course, and all kinds of videos on the channel. We cover a lot of things here, but other than that, check out my links in the top pinned comment to my Twitter and other places. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DC Cinematic Universe in the next video. Goodbye.